All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Alexy Khrabrov, the founding community head of AI Alliance, and now head of community at Alexey. And here we are at FPT in Paris, France, with Yann LeCun, who is the chief scientific advisor to the new Tapestry project of the AI Alliance. Please tell us what the Tapestry is, how it came about, and how you became basically its scientific lead.
So Tapestry project is an old idea I had that I was originally trying to push within Meta, but it didn't go very far. It's the idea that there's going to be a future where every one of us is going to get our entire information diet through AI assistants. And if those AI assistants are produced by a handful of companies on the west coast of the US or in China, we're in trouble because we're not going to have enough diversity of sources of information. So what I've been proposing is an open source platform which would constitute a foundation model on top of which to train AI systems, and those AI systems would be very highly diverse. That would provide people with a high diversity of AI assistants with their language, their culture, their value system, their centers of interest, their political biases, whatever they want. And so the best way to do this is to have a coalition of multiple countries or regions or contributors collaborating in some sort of federation to train a frontier model. And they don't have to exchange data. They can retain sovereignty on their data, but what they exchange are parameter vectors. And the system is trained collaboratively. Everybody will have access to it, and each country or region may use their own local data and their local languages, their local library material, everything. And so I think it's pretty much the only way that we're going to get access to a wide diversity of AI assistants in the future.
Right. And so, and basically, you've been, the head of AI at Meta, and you led research at Meta, and Llama was a big success, right? And so, essentially, it's not enough for the world, right? Because if basically we don't know exactly the data on which it was trained, right? So how, we've been here for a 2-day workshop, kicking off Tapestry, and so we've actually heard representatives of multiple countries, from multiple labs, and so there are kind of some of the architectural ideas. How would you summarize the current state of the idea? How should the world go about building this model as a scientific and open source AI community?
Right. So first of all, I need to make it clear that I'm not at Meta anymore.
Correct.
I left Meta, in early 2026. I'm involved in a new company called Ami Labs, but
That's right.
This effort is separate. It's really a collaborative, non-commercial, open project. So what I've seen in the past is a very strong desire from a lot of countries around the world, countries that are neither the US nor China, to have some level of sovereignty in AI. And I see a lot of efforts in countries like Switzerland, Germany, France, UAE, Vietnam, India, Japan, Korea. Efforts to build their own LLM.
Yes.
And it's kind of a waste of resources, right?
Yes.
I mean, all of those countries should get together and train a common LLM. I see some countries also that in the past have built on top of Llama, but it's not clear what role Meta is going to play in the open source world in the future.
That's right.
Because they're kind of becoming much less open. So I think there is an important role to play for an organization like this one, and this is the kickoff meeting. We hope to rally a lot of talented young people. We want this to be a bottom-up project where people who think they can contribute technically can contribute technically without having to go through major bureaucracy or anything. But I think we're going to get a lot of support from governments around the world.
Right.
Either money or political support or all kinds of stuff, or resources in general.
Right.
Because there is so much of a demand.
Right. You mentioned that so AI Alliance held several meetings at the AI Action Summits in Paris and New Delhi, and so you mentioned that basically because governments turn to you for advice, that heads of states were interested in this specifically. Right. So governments are understanding that this is important,
Yeah.
and so there is demand. There is demand around the world, and so this initiative is actually, put together to answer the actual demand that people around the world have.
That's right. There's a huge demand, and a lot of countries realize that their only path to AI sovereignty is through open source and collaboration.
Right.
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 So that gives kind of a big boost for projects like this one. But I think what's important also is, and pardon me to get a little technical, but what we want is build a software infrastructure so that various contributors can train their model locally on their own data, preserve the sovereignty on their data. They don't have to exchange their data. The only information that circulates between the contributors are parameter vectors for models, right? And we would train those models in distributed fashion, but in such a way that they eventually arrive at a consensus model that is as good as if it had been trained on the totality of all the data accessible to everyone. And that's an important aspect because that's probably a way to get those open models to get better than the proprietary models, because they will have access to more data, more diverse data as well.
Right.
Right. Using data that regional data that the commercial entities don't have access to.
Right. So this is a technical architectural challenge for the model builder. So this is not something that yet exists.
No, we still have to figure out. We know the techniques will exist. We know they kind of work. They are prototypes.
It's mathematically feasible.
It's feasible. We know it's feasible, but but the details have to be worked out.
Yes. You know what I like about this? That you're known, to proclaim bold opinions that LLMs is a dead end, and new scientists, new researchers should not go in them. And your company is building a world model.
Yes.
But here you're advising a very practical today endeavor, and you actually said that these things are useful. There is a place for them. There is a demand for them, and you actually propose a way to make them better and make them useful for everybody. So it could be a PhD for somebody who will figure out how to do this.
A whole bunch of PhDs. Yeah. No, but I mean, I've never said LLM were useless. Right. I mean, LLMs are clearly very useful. We all use them on a daily basis.
That's right.
For code generation in particular, I mean, people use it for mathematics, but also for all kinds of stuff.
Right.
For access to information, I mean, there's no question they're useful.
Right.
I mean, pretty much all of computer technology is useful, but pretty much all of computer technology is not a path towards human level intelligence.
Right.
What I've said is LLMs are not a path to
human level
AGI. Right?
That's right.
I don't like the word AGI, but they're not a path towards human-like intelligence.
Right.
But they're still useful.
That's right. So now, obviously, you're an academic and you're a leader and a startup founder, and you advise governments. So you have multiple kind of planes where you operate. And so, and the AI Alliance has a lot of brain power and a lot of executive power. So the question: how do we go around the world and engage people? Because obviously we need smart PhD students to work in different leading universities on this problem, and maybe in Sorbonne, or maybe in NYU, and maybe Stanford or Berkeley, somewhere else. And also we need, obviously, to align with government labs, which already put in resources into the national LLMs, and convince them that we'd rather all work together instead of them reinventing the wheel and being 2 steps behind, ChatGPT OSS or something like this. Right. And also we need to go, and convince probably corporations in various countries that it's in their interest. So how do you think we should kind of proceed as a AI Alliance to enlist people to work with us in different ways?
So there's a lot of really good reasons that will motivate people to contribute to this, right? So obviously at the government level, it's just sovereignty. Basically.
Yes.
Right. And not be dependent upon technology from the US and China. There's obvious geopolitical reasons for this.
Yes.
Then there is motivation for companies in those various countries to not be, again, dependent upon a supplier that can change their their licensing term from one day to the next. Here, you would have access to a frontier open model, completely accessible. You can do whatever you want with it. You can fine tune it. You have the entire source code. You have part of the training data. You have the training code. I mean, it would be much more open than current open weight models.
Yes.
So there is a motivation for companies also to actually kind of rally to a project like this. But what's most important is for individual contributors to actually be motivated by the mission. And the mission is basically to protect democracy.
Yes.
Right? To ensure that people have access to a wide variety of sources of information.
Yes.
And don't get their information filtered by whatever someone in Silicon Valley or in Beijing decides.
Right. Or anywhere.
Or anywhere for that matter, right? So there you can, get the foundation model produced by Tapestry and then fine tune it with your own data, your own biases, your own political opinions, if you have them, whatever, your value system. And now you provide an assistant to people who have the similar interest to yours, right?
Yes.
And we need a high diversity of assistants of this type, for the same reason you need a high diversity of the press, of newspapers, magazines, and information sources.
Yes. Audible voices.
So that, the mission of preserving democracy, I think, and cultural diversity, I think, is quite motivating for a lot of people. And there is really interesting technical problems to solve to get this to work. How do you train a big model, LLM or whatever it is, in a distributed fashion,
right,
with data centers spread around the world that cannot communicate information in a synchronous manner. They're each trained on their own subset of the data, and they still have to basically contribute to a common model. It's a big technical challenge.
And maybe using commodity hardware, right? Because not using latest expensive NVIDIA GPUs, but maybe using smaller GPUs. That will be a very interesting question. How do distributed training like this?
Right. If you can do it this way, it's possible that even with like a few GPUs, you can actually make significant contributions.
Right.
So, but that's remains to be invented or fine-tuned. There are techniques for this. We just don't know if they work at that scale, and so there's a project for a few PhD students there.
Are you planning to advise any PhD students working on this?
So this is not my expertise, and it's not the topic of my research. There is people here at that meeting and people working with them who are much more expert than me at this. But I'd be more than happy. I actually kind of wrote one paper on this idea of distributed training, but this was like 12 years ago.
Right.
I think it's a really interesting problem. I'm happy to provide advice, but I know there are a lot of people who are way more expert at this than I am.
Well, the AI Alliance has multiple universities as members, right? Dozens around the world. So if you are a student, PhD student watching this, please connect with the Alliance. We'll put some links under this video how to get in touch and contribute, and we can route you to advisors who might be able to supervise this, because this is an important scientific problem for the world.
Right, and everything is still to be made.
That's right.
We have a GitHub, but it's essentially empty at this point.
Yep.
And so if you have some good ideas, come in. You can play an important role. We don't really have an organization with a technical leader yet. So any idea you can provide, I think will be listened to.
Thank you very much, Yann. Looking forward to the success of this endeavor under your scientific leadership. Thank you.